Hello friends again, welcome back to Shadows of Revenge. First at all, tell me, where are you from the world watching my video? This is a true story, so watch till end. My name is Harold, and before that night, I believe I knew what cold was. I was 72 years old when winter finally taught me the difference between low temperature and complete abandonment. Cold can numb your skin. Betrayal goes deeper. It settles into the bones and refuses to leave. The snow had been falling since dusk, thick and merciless, the kind that doesn't drift gently, but attacks the ground like it's angry at being alive. Each flake stung my face as if it carried intent. I sat on a metal bench outside the Greyhound station in Calgary, the iron beneath me leaching what little warmth my body still possessed. The station behind me was nearly empty, its glass doors sliding open and shut only for ghosts, late-night travelers who never once looked in my direction. Pressed against my chest was my grandson, Marcus, 6 years old, too young to understand why his world had collapsed in a single afternoon, too young to understand why his grandmother was still just a photograph and a memory I spoke about in past tense. His small body trembled even through the layers of clothing I had wrapped him in. My old wool coat, frayed at the cuffs, smelling faintly of mothballs and thyme, was the only barrier between him and the night that wanted him gone. An hour earlier, he had cried himself into exhaustion. "Grandpa, where's Grandma?" he had asked for the third time, his voice cracking in that way children do when they're close to giving up. I had no answer that wouldn't shatter him. Now he slept, his face buried into my chest, breath shallow, lips pale. Every few minutes, his body jerked slightly, as if the cold was shaking him awake from the inside. I tightened my arms around him and leaned forward, trying to shield him from the wind that screamed through the station like something wounded and furious. The sound echoed, long, hollow howls bouncing off concrete walls, making the place feel less like a bus terminal and more like a graveyard that hadn't finished filling yet. That morning, I had woken up in a warm house. By evening, I was homeless, not because of debt, not because of addiction, not because of strangers, because of family. Just hours earlier, I had been standing in the living room of my son's house, the same living room where I had once watched him take his first steps. The walls were clean, decorated with expensive art that Vivian had chosen. Nothing there belonged to me anymore, not even my dignity. It had started with a sound, a small sound, the unmistakable splash of grape juice soaking into fabric. Marcus froze first. His eyes widened as he looked down at the deep purple stains spreading across the cream-colored Persian rug. He didn't cry. He didn't move. He just looked at me like children do when they're about to learn that accidents are punishable. Vivian's scream cut through the house like breaking glass. "What did you do?" She rushed in, as if she had been waiting for an excuse. Her face twisted, not with surprise, but with satisfaction. Rage that had been rehearsed for years finally had permission to perform. Before I could speak, before Marcus could even apologize, she started. "Do you have any idea how much that rug cost? Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? Do you ever watch him properly?" Her words didn't slow. They escalated. "You bring nothing into this house," she said, her voice sharp and precise. "Nothing but bad luck. Ever since you arrived, everything has gone wrong." I stepped forward, my hands shaking. "Vivian, he's just a child. It was an accident." She laughed. A short, cruel sound. "An accident." She turned toward the hallway. "Daniel, are you hearing this?" My son appeared in the doorway. Daniel, the boy I had carried on my shoulders, the man I had trusted with my last years. He didn't look at me. His eyes hovered somewhere near the floor, as if courage might trip him if he lifted his head too high. Vivian didn't wait for him to speak. "Get out," she said. At first, I thought I had misheard. Then she said it again, louder. "Get out of my house. Take the child and leave." Marcus began to cry then, soft sobs that made my chest ache. Vivian stepped closer, her face inches from mine. "You've poisoned my husband against me long enough. And don't think I don't know. You're exactly like your wife." The room went silent. She leaned in and whispered the words that still burn worse than frostbite. "Your wife ran away because she couldn't stand you." My knees weakened. Daniel said nothing. Not a word. Not a defense. Not even a lie. He simply closed the door behind us. I don't remember walking out. I only remember the sound of the door locking, the finality of it, the click that said everything without needing explanation. By the time we reached the street, night had already swallowed the city. I walked until my legs begged me to stop. Marcus grew heavier with every step, not because he weighed much, but because despair adds weight to everything. My breath burned. My fingers went numb. The streets blurred together, lights smearing through falling snow, cars rushing past as if we were invisible. The bus station was the only place still open. The shelters were full. My sister lived thousands of miles away, in Nova Scotia. She had her own troubles. I couldn't become another burden. Not again. So I sat, and I waited. The bench bit into my spine. My joints screamed in protest. I pulled Marcus closer, whispering apologies he would never remember. "I'm sorry, my boy," I murmured into the frozen air. "Grandpa is so sorry." The snow answered by falling harder. I tilted my head back and closed my eyes, just for a moment. "Eleanor," I whispered. My wife's name still felt unfinished on my tongue. "Are you watching us? Can you see what's happened to our family?" Marcus stirred. His small fingers curled into my sweater. "Grandpa, I'm cold." "I know," I said, my voice breaking. "I know." I pressed my forehead to his hair, trying to give him warmth I no longer had. That was when the headlights appeared. At first, I thought it was just another car passing through, another reminder that the world was moving on without us. But these lights slowed, turned, cut through the snow deliberately. A black vehicle pulled up in front of us. Large, polished, wrong for this place. Its engine purred quietly, confidently, as if it had never known hunger or fear. The window rolled down, and time hesitated. I recognized the face instantly, even though for years had passed. Thomas, my wife's younger brother. The last time I'd seen him was at Eleanor's memorial service. Back then, he had been thin, restless, smelling faintly of alcohol and regret. A man unraveling quietly. Now he sat behind the wheel of a luxury SUV, dressed in a tailored overcoat, his face composed, eyes sharp and unreadable. He didn't greet me. He didn't smile. He looked at Marcus. Then he said, "Get in." No warmth. No explanation. Just command. I stared at him, my mind scrambling. "Thomas, what are you doing here?" He didn't answer. "Get in," he repeated, his tone firmer now. "Unless you want a grandson to freeze to death on that bench." The word struck like a hammer. I looked down at Marcus. His lips had begun to turn blue. Whatever questions I had, whatever fear lingered, none of it mattered anymore. I stood, my body screaming, and carried Marcus toward the vehicle. The moment I climbed inside, warmth slammed into me, so hard it hurt. My fingers burned as blood returned. Marcus whimpered softly, but didn't wake. Thomas pulled away from the station without another word. The city lights blurred past the windows. I waited. Finally, I asked the only question that mattered. "Where are you taking us?" He didn't look at me. "Somewhere safe," he said. Then, after a pause that felt intentional, he added quietly, "I need to show you something, Harold. Something about Eleanor." My heart stopped, and in that moment, I understood something terrible and unavoidable. The night wasn't finished with me yet. The car moved through the city like it didn't belong to it. Street lights slid across the windshield in slow, deliberate streaks, each one briefly illuminating Thomas's face before surrendering him back to shadow. He drove without hurry, without hesitation, as if every turn had been memorized long ago. Calgary disappeared behind us inch by inch, replaced by darker roads and longer silences. Marcus slept curled against my side, his small breaths finally steady. The warmth of the vehicle had revived some color in his cheeks, but I couldn't stop watching him, couldn't stop counting each rise and fall of his chest like it might suddenly forget how. My hand was still trembling. Thomas hadn't spoken again after mentioning Eleanor's name. He didn't need to. The word itself had detonated inside me, scattering 4 years of grief that had never truly settled. My thoughts raced ahead of the car, ahead of logic, ahead of sanity. Eleanor was gone. She'd been gone for 4 years. Her car abandoned near Hope. Her purse untouched. Her absence officially sealed by paperwork and time. So why did Thomas sound like someone carrying unfinished business? The road narrowed. Snow thickened. Civilization gave way to darkness broken only by the headlights carving a narrow tunnel forward. "How did you know where to find us?" I finally asked. Thomas's jaw tightened. His eyes stayed on the road. "I've been watching," he said. The words settled uneasily between us. Watching whom? You, he replied. All of you. I didn't know whether to feel comforted or afraid. Minutes passed, maybe longer. Time felt elastic, stretching, contracting, refusing to behave normally. I noticed details I wouldn't have otherwise. The faint scent of pine inside the car, the absence of music, the way Thomas's hands never shook on the steering wheel. This wasn't a coincidence. Thomas, I said quietly, afraid of waking Marcus. If you know something, if you've known something all this time, I told you. He cut in, his voice sharp now. Not yet. I swallowed. The silence that followed was heavier than the cold outside. It pressed inward, demanding patience I didn't have. My chest felt tight, not with grief this time, but with something closer to dread. An hour passed before we left the highway. The road turned narrow and uneven, flanked by dark trees that leaned toward us like eavesdroppers. Snow clung to their branches, sagging under its own weight. Somewhere deep in the woods, something howled. Not the wind this time, but an animal. It reminded me how far we were from help, from witnesses. When the farmhouse finally appeared, it looked unreal. Warm light glowed through its windows, steady and inviting. Smoke curled lazily from a chimney. The structure itself was modest, old but cared for, standing alone against the vast white field like it had learned how to endure without asking permission. Thomas parked and cut the engine. For a moment, none of us moved. You're safe here, he said, his voice softer now, almost human again. He stepped out first, circled the car, and opened my door before I could reach for the handle. I hesitated, then stepped out carefully, my joints protesting as they remembered the cold. Inside, the house breathed warmth. A fire crackled in a stone hearth, its light dancing across wooden walls worn smooth by time. A pot simmered gently on the stove, filling the air with the smell of soup. Real food, not desperation. Everything about the space felt lived in, not staged. This wasn't a hideout. It was a home. There's a bedroom down the hall, Thomas said. Fresh sheets. Food's ready when you are. I didn't ask why he was doing this. I didn't thank him. My body moved on instinct alone. I laid Marcus in the bed and tucked the quilt around him. He sighed in his sleep, one small hand reaching outward until it found mine. I stayed there longer than necessary, watching him breathe, memorizing the moment like it might be taken away again. When I returned to the living room, Thomas was seated by the fire. He had poured 2 glasses of whiskey. One sat untouched on the table between us. Sit, he said. I did. The fire popped, sending sparks upward. Shadows danced across the walls, distorting Thomas's face in a way that made him look older, heavier, like someone carrying weight that didn't belong to him. I'm going to tell you something, he said slowly, that will ruin what little peace you've managed to survive with. I said nothing. Once I start, there's no going back. I nodded. Thomas reached into his coat and pulled out a small digital recorder. It looked ordinary, cheap, something that could be lost easily. Before Eleanor disappeared, he said, she came to see me. My breath caught. She was afraid, he continued. Not anxious, not worried, afraid. I'd never seen her like that. He placed the recorder on the table. She told me if anything happened to her, this was to be played only when I was certain the truth could no longer be buried. He pressed the button. Static crackled. Then, her voice, thin, trembling, but unmistakable. Thomas, if you're hearing this, something's gone wrong. My hands clenched in a fist so tight my nails bit skin. I need you to protect Harold. Eleanor's voice continued. He doesn't know what Daniel and Vivian have done. He doesn't know about the insurance. I felt the room tilt. Insurance. 5 years ago, Eleanor said, Daniel convinced me to take out a policy. $2 million. He said it was for Marcus. For the future. The fire roared louder. Or maybe it was just one round. But last night, her voice cracked. I found documents. They've been planning this. They want me gone. And once I'm gone, they'll drain Harold of everything he's left. The recording ended. Silence swallowed me. I stared at the table, at the innocent-looking device that had just rewritten my life. My thoughts collided violently, each one weird words. That's impossible, I whispered. But even as I said it, memories rose again. Vivian's insistence on managing life, Daniel's distance, the pressure, the control, the way grief had been bank statements, transfers, dates. 3 months after Eleanor vanished, he said quietly, Daniel received nearly $2 million. Offshore. They declared her dead. I said, my voice hollow. Without a body. Thomas's eyes glistened, because they believed there wouldn't be one. I looked up. What do you mean? He held my gaze. I found her. The words hit like a collision. Alive, he added. I couldn't breathe. She's alive, he repeated, slowing down. They didn't kill her. They hired someone else to do it. My vision blurred. She's been held for years. Drugged. Hidden. Where? I demanded. British Columbia, he said. Near Prince George. The room spun. My body betrayed me. Sobs tore free, without permission. Grief, rage, relief. Everything tangled together into something I couldn't name. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I choked. Why let me believe? Because I needed proof, Thomas said. Because if they knew I was close, they would have silenced you too. Or Marcus. He leaned forward. I wasn't going to save Eleanor, just to lose the rest of you. The fire crackled. Somewhere down the hall, Marcus slept, and I realized the truth with terrifying clarity. The betrayal hadn't ended. It had only been waiting. I don't remember standing up, but suddenly I wasn't sitting anymore. My body had risen on instinct alone, like an animal sensing danger long after the trap is already snapped shut. The room felt smaller now. The fire that had once felt comforting suddenly seemed too loud, too alive, as if it were listening. She's alive, I said again, testing the words like they might shatter. Eleanor is alive. Thomas nodded once. No relief in his expression. No celebration. Only gravity. They paid a man to erase her, he said. A professional. Someone who doesn't leave loose ends. My stomach turned. A man named Victor Chun. He specializes in disappearances. No bodies. No questions. People vanish. And paperwork does the rest. I lowered myself back in the chair because my legs could no longer be trusted. But Victor got greedy. Thomas continued. Instead of killing her, he kept her, drugged her, held her like inventory, planned to extract more money later. I closed my eyes. The image forced itself into my mind anyway. Eleanor alone, confused, calling my name into walls that didn't answer. My chest tightened so violently I thought my ribs would crack. For years. I asked, yes. The word landed with a dull, irreversible ring. Thomas opened another folder. Inside were photographs, grainy, distant, taken from angles meant to avoid detection. A concrete building surrounded by trees. Barbed wire half buried under snow. A loading bay with no markings. She was kept here, he said. Northern wilderness. Isolated. Controlled. I couldn't look anymore. How do you know? I whispered. How do you know all of this is real? Thomas leaned back. Exhaustion finally surfacing in his posture. Because for 4 years, I've done nothing else, he said. I followed money that didn't want me found. I listened to conversations meant to be erased. I became someone I didn't recognize, just to get close enough. His voice dropped, and because 6 months ago, I watched her breathe. My heart slammed against my ribs. You saw her? Yes. Then why? My voice broke. Why am I only hearing this now? Thomas's eyes hardened. Because if Daniel had even suspected I was close, Eleanor would be dead. And so would you. The room went silent again. But this silence was different. It wasn't empty. It was full of truth, of rage, of grief that finally had a face. My son, I said slowly. My own son did this. Thomas didn't correct me. He planned it, Thomas said, with his wife. Over years. Insurance policies. Financial pressure. Isolation. They didn't rush it. I finished. They waited. Thomas continued. Until Eleanor trusted him. Until grief made you pay. Until Marcus became leverage. The words sliced cleanly through. All those small humiliations. The criticism. The control. The slow erosion of my life. It hadn't been cruelty. It had been strategy. I handed over my pension every month. I said numbly. Every single one. I thought I was helping. Thomas's jaw tightened. You were feeding the machine. The sound escaped my throat that might have been a laugh if it hadn't been so broken. And Daniel. I asked, what did he say when you confronted him? I didn't, Thomas replied. Not yet. I looked up sharply. What do you mean? I let him think he'd won. He said, that Eleanor was gone. That you were finished. That Marcus would eventually This needs to be handled. Another voice responded, flat, uninterested. Handled how? Make sure she doesn't come back. I ripped the headphones off and slammed them onto the table. Stop, I said hoarsely. I can't. Thomas obeyed. The fire hissed softly. Somewhere in the house, wood creaked as it settled. I felt hollowed out, like everything I'd ever believed had been scooped from my chest and replaced with mush. Tomorrow, Thomas said carefully, we're driving west. I looked at him. To where? To see Eleanor. The words felt unreal. She's in a rehabilitation center now, he explained. RCMP secured her after the raid. Victor is in custody. He cooperated once he realized the evidence was airtight. You work with the police? I asked. Yes, quietly, patiently, and Daniel. I said. Thomas met my eyes. The day after you see Eleanor, he said, Daniel and Vivian will be arrested. I swallowed hard. For what they've done, he continued. For what they planned. For what they believed they'd gotten away with. I sat back, my mind spiraling. Justice. The word felt foreign, distant. I had survived so long without it that I wasn't sure how to hold it now. That night, sleep refused to come. Every time I closed my eyes, Eleanor appeared. Not as she was, but as she might have been during those years. Thin, sedated, calling my name in the silence. I woke gasping, my heart racing, my body soaked in sweat despite the move. Morning came gray and quiet. We left before sunrise. The drive stretched across provinces and memories of life. Thomas had planned everything. Stops, hotels, Marcus played games in backseat, blissfully unaware of the emotional minefield unfolding around me. We're going to see Grandma. I told him gently. He smiled. Really? Yes. Is she still nice? He asked. My throat tightened. She's always been nice, I said. The rehabilitation center stood surrounded by trees, its exterior calm, almost deceptive. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic and flowers, a strange combination that felt both sterile and hopeful. Thomas stopped outside a door. She knows you're coming, he said softly. But Harold, she's been through things no one should survive. She may not be the Eleanor you remember. I nodded. The door opened. She sat by the window, smaller than I remembered. Frilier, her hair cut short, streaked with silver. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers trembling slightly. But her eyes, those gray eyes, they found me instantly. Harold, she whispered. The sound of my name in her voice shattered me completely. I crossed the room in 3 steps and gathered her in my arms. She was real, warm, alive. We cried without words. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Marcus hovered uncertainly until Eleanor noticed him. Is that Marcus? She asked. He climbed onto the bed beside her. She touched his hair like she was afraid he might disappear. My beautiful boy, she whispered. I came back. Later, she told me everything. How she discovered papers. How she tried to run. How the men had forced her off the road. How the drugs blurred years into nothing. I thought you'd believe I laughed, she said quietly. That Daniel would poison me against me. Never, I said. Not for a moment. The following week unfolded like a storm breaking. Police, courtrooms, cameras. Daniel and Vivian were arrested at dawn. I watched the footage from Eleanor's room. Daniel didn't look like my son anymore. The trial lasted months. The verdicts were final. But as they led him away, I felt no victory. Only grief. And something else. Peace. Because the truth, no matter how deeply buried, had finally been brought into the light. Justice didn't arrive with fireworks. It came quietly, on ordinary mornings, carried by people in uniforms who spoke calmly and didn't look anyone in the eye. It came in documents stamped with dates, in courtrooms that smelled faintly of disinfecting and old paper, in verdicts read without emotion. It came in sentences measured in years. Daniel was given 25. Vivian received 18. They stood when the judge spoke, faces carefully arranged into masks that didn't crack. Not when evidence was listed. Not when Eleanor appeared on a screen to testify. Not when my voice shook as I described the night I was thrown into the snow with a child in my arms. I searched Daniel's face one last time. Not for forgiveness. Not for remorse. Just for recognition. I found nothing. When it was over, when the room emptied and the noise faded, there was no triumph waiting for me. No rush of relief. Only a deep, hollow stillness where anger had lived for years. Eleanor squeezed my hand. "It's finished," she whispered. But healing didn't begin that day. It began slowly, painfully. 6 months passed before Eleanor was strong enough to leave the rehabilitation center. Some mornings she woke clear-eyed and steady. Other days, she drifted somewhere far away, her gaze unfocused, her breath shallow, as if part of her was still trapped in a room without windows. When the nightmares came, I held her until they passed. When words failed her, silence became our language. We didn't return to Calgary. Neither of us could bear it. Thomas drove us west instead, into the mountains, where the air was sharp and clean and carried no memories of locked doors or whispered plans. We settled in a small town near Canmore, tucked beneath the watchful peaks of the Rockies. A modest cottage, nothing extravagant, just enough. Enough windows for light, enough space to breathe. Marcus started school there. He made friends quickly, laughter returning to him like it had never left. Children are resilient that way. He asked about his parents sometimes. We told him the truth carefully, in pieces small enough not to crush him. "Your grandmother went on a very long journey," Eleanor told him once. But she found her way back. Every morning, Eleanor and I sat on the porch with our coffee, watching sunlight creep across the mountains. We didn't speak much during those moments. We didn't need to. Thomas visited often. The man who had once been unraveling quietly had changed. He left accounting behind. The numbers no longer interested him. He began working as a victim's advocate, helping families navigate loss and betrayal that looked too much like home. "This case saved me too," he admitted once. "I just didn't know it at the time." As for me, I learned something I never wanted to learn so late in life. That survival isn't heroic. It's stubborn. It's staying awake when sleep would be easier. It's holding a child when your arms are tired. It's waiting through the cold because you don't have permission to give up. Sometimes I think back to that bench outside the bus station. The wind, the snow, Marcus's small voice saying he was cold. If Thomas hadn't appeared that night, if the universe hadn't cracked open just enough, I know how it would have ended. The cold would have finished what betrayal had started. Marcus would have grown up somewhere else, never knowing how fiercely he was loved. But that isn't how our story ends. Eleanor sits beside me now as I tell this, her hand warm in mine. Marcus's laughter drifts in from the yard. The mountains stand unmoved, ancient and patient, like they've seen worse and survived it all. Betrayal took years from us, but it didn't take everything. And that, I've learned, is sometimes the quietest form of victory there